Welcome back, YouTube. And for those who do not know me, hello. My name is Noah, and on my channel we talk about death, true crime, haunted people, places, and things, spiritual reparation, and how you can fuck around and find out. If you are not subscribed here, I invite you to go ahead, bestie, click the subscribe button, turn your notification bells on, and if you are not following me over on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, I invite you to follow me there as well. On today's episode, we will be exploring another supposed portal, and that portal is Baltimore, Maryland. Now, I was a little surprised when someone requested that I cover Baltimore because I never knew that it was as haunted as it is. I went to school in Maryland, college in Maryland, and I just never picked up on anything. But again, Thirsty Thursdays was a thing back then, and I was always thirsty. Okay, so we will be watching some viral TikToks regarding how haunted Baltimore, Maryland is. And as always, please make sure that you follow all of the creators featured in this video. I will be linking their TikTok names down below. This first creator goes by the handle My Bloody Valentine, and she is visiting the gravesite of the Ouija board creator, and I had no idea that he was buried in Baltimore. Super random. I have done my research on Ouija boards, but I never really dug deep into the creator. Even though I don't fuck with Ouija boards and I tell y'all not to mess with them either, I gotta admit that's a pretty badass headstone. It really is. It's cute. She does Ouija, I guess, and collects them, so I'm just trying to set the forefront of why this place maybe is haunted. This next creator goes by the handle of Real Ghost Hunter 1, and he is showing us one of the most haunted places in Baltimore and explaining why it's haunted other than the most obvious reasons. Just look.
Have you ever heard of a church that was built on top of a cemetery and contains a screaming skull that could drive you insane if you hear it? Here's one of the most haunted and crazy cemeteries I've ever heard of. The Westminster Cemetery in Baltimore, Maryland. This cemetery is the burial ground of the who's who of Baltimore. Its most famous resident is the author Edgar Allan Poe. But that's a whole story in himself. Not all buried here are at rest, due to the fact that the church was built over part of the graveyard, and the graves beneath can only be accessed through tunnels. One of the most famous and craziest stories I've ever heard comes from this cemetery about a screaming skull, the brutal murder of a local minister, who just so happens to be buried in the cemetery. Every night, a bone-chilling and terrifying scream pierces the ground from his grave for all to hear. Desperate to stop this otherworldly screaming, someone, most likely the killer, dug up the remains from the grave and shoved a gag in the mouth of the skull. Then placed that skull in a concrete block next to the grave. To this day, visitors of the cemetery will report eerie sound of a muffled scream emanating from the grave at night. Whoa! And those who haven't run away and stayed to listen end up in a psychiatric ward for the remainder of their lives. Apparently, once you hear the scream, it echoes in your mind over and over and never stops. And if that wasn't bad enough, I already told you the church was built over part of the cemetery. And that part of the graveyard is only accessible by the catacombs or tunnels underneath the church. Many of the locals say this is the most active part of the cemetery. Well, it does have a dark history. These catacombs worked great for body snatchers and medical students looking to snatch bodies out to practice on. Not to mention that during the Civil War, soldiers used these catacombs as hiding places for their weapons. But up until 1920, people were drawn to these catacombs to come and commit suicide, joining the already deceased. One would wonder, what kind of dark forces are at work to draw people to their own death? Let's not forget about the vandals coming in and destroying graves and stealing bodies as well. Many spirits have been seen here, including one called the Crazy Lunatic who roams through the cemetery, looking for something that he can never find. And a drunken spirit ghoul searching and staggering through the cemetery.
Over 80 bodies have been found in this park over the years. Welcome to Leakin Park in Baltimore, the scariest place in America. So if you've never heard of Leakin Park, this place is famous. It's in the heart of Baltimore, bordered by some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the city. And this place has been a notorious body dumping ground for years. There have been all sorts of victims of all different sorts of crimes that have happened here. One thing that happens regularly in the park is the dumping of bodies of animals. Now, I've been to the park and I've actually found a couple of dead dogs wrapped up in garbage bags. It's really sad, but the history only gets worse from there. There are a lot of hotspots in Leakin Park where people love to dump bodies, but one right here is nicknamed the Devil's Well. Only a few years ago in 2018, a man was brutally murdered right here. His body was set on fire and it was then dumped down this well. To this day, nobody has ever been arrested in connection to this murder. There was also the murder of Hae-Min Lee, whose body was found dumped here. She was the subject of the podcast Serial. But it's not just single murders that have happened here. Serial killers have operated inside of this park, including this man, Reginald Vernon Oates. Decades ago, he was found wandering through the park where he had buried 4 young boys in shallow graves. He was carrying a lunchbox with pieces of the boys inside of it. There's also Lemuel Wallace, who was murdered inside of the park's restroom. A local pastor from Baltimore was actually convicted of hiring a hitman to bring Lemuel out there so that he would be brutally murdered so the pastor could collect life insurance money from him. And this is just a sample of the murders that have happened here. I'm talking 80 different confirmed bodies that have been discovered there. A friend of mine named Dan Bell, who's done a great video series of documentaries on this park, actually found a human skull fragment inside of the park just a few years ago. He called it into the police. He had just been walking through the woods when he came across it, and it ended up being the skull of someone who had taken their own life. There's actually a site dedicated to mapping out where all of the bodies in Leakin Park have been found. As you can see, these are all red dots where corpses have been recovered, and this is only a fraction of the stories. There was a serial killer who brought a woman to Leakin Park to murder her. He cut off her ears, but she eventually fought him off and escaped. There's obviously tons of gang violence and bodies that are just dumped. And on a specific road right here named Winterbourne Avenue, a serial killer has dumped multiple bodies. Winterbourne is the last remaining road that actually goes through Leakin Park. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. Years ago, the city actually closed off most of the inroads that led through Leakin Park because so many bodies were being dumped there. I actually filmed a whole documentary about Leakin Park. It's 2.5 hours long. We visited so many of the sites where these bodies had been dumped. We interviewed a bunch of people who had experiences there. And we went there 3 different times throughout a year to try and investigate if this place was haunted or not. And let me tell you, it was one of the craziest videos I've ever filmed in my life. And the stories of this park are so twisted, so dark. Mafia dumping grounds, so many unsolved murders. If you want to watch the full documentary, it's on my YouTube now. The link is in my bio. But warning, it is disturbing.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world. This is why Baltimore has drama. Because what would make you build a church over a cemetery? And I didn't know that Edgar Allan Poe was buried there, but still, why? Be fucking around and finding out like this. This next video comes from an account called Ryan McKern, and they are actually touring this very said haunted cemetery at night, which stressed me out a little bit, but just watch.
Listed haunts of the Westminster burial grounds. Cemetery visitors have reported hearing bodiless voices, footsteps and screams, feeling the grip of invisible, icy hands, sniffing inexplainable stretches, and encountering cold spots. There are numerous alleged sightings of spirits and dark, misty figures roaming the grounds, often looking more lost than the living. Ghost hunters have captured EVPs and photos of the dearly departed in orbed shadow form. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. One suspected cause of the eeriness is the church itself, because it was thrown up in the middle of the graveyard. It's said that the cemetery's brick paths were used as a foundation. There are some tombs that are now inaccessible to visitors, and there's nothing more noisy than a lonesome, forgotten ghost. Another in the movement of graves during the rebuilding of the church, a whole section of Revolutionary War soldiers thought lost was later discovered under one of the walkways, and other bodies were likewise stuffed, shuffled around, or just plain lost. God only knows how many plots were covered or moved because of the church. It was said that the kids could be seen playing with the skulls in the graveyard. Davish Hall, another source of potential spookiness, is the oldest medical school building in the U.S., dating back a couple centuries, and was where bodies were dissected by the students. It was also built on property carved from John Howard's farm. So guess where the cadavers came from? Digging up bodies for anatomical studies became commonplace. The midnight raids, though, so upset the locals that they once hung a student's grave robber that they had caught in the ghoulish act. Vandals and thieves were also a constant problem. They left the bodies intact but stripped off anything of value, like jewelry. Add to the macabre mixed tales of people buried alive, although for what reason we never did discover. And you have a perfect storm. Spooks neglected, abused, dissected, relocated, built over, lost. It's no wonder there are so many reports of Westminster apparitions.
As if you're not going to see this type of stuff in a regular cemetery, just add on the fact that they basically desecrated it and built a church over it. Y'all, please, they cannot be serious. This next video comes from an account underneath the handle Tax Law Professional. Her name is Victoria, and she visited the most haunted hotel, or so they say, in America.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a live update. Many of you think I'm super excited to be in this haunted hotel because I write about dead people, but I write about dead people who aren't moving or haunting anything. And so this is a little bit trippy. And so I'm going to take you for a walk down the hall so that you can see what the hall looks like for yourself. Okay. Okay. So right here, we have the elevators that don't work. And with my luck, they will start working in the middle of the night. These are not the main elevators. And if any of you see anything behind me, you have good reason to panic. I'll be pretty panicked. I'm not super brave. Okay, this is the main hallway, and it does look a little bit like The Shining, right? Just a little bit. And then we turn the corner, and we have the elevators that actually work here. And here we have a weird conference table back in the creepy hallway. And this is basically the 18th floor, and apparently the most haunted floor in the hotel because of the number of jumpers off the roof during the Depression is the 19th floor. So yay, I'm really close to it.
Victoria girl, I fear that you may be in danger because that TV absolutely turned on as she was closing the door. No one else was in the room but her. Let me tell y'all something. You can throw up curtains, you can paint, you can renovate, but if a space is haunted, it's haunted. And you really disturbing them, even though you feel like they're disturbing you. This next clip comes from an account called The Paranormal Files, and I'm not sure if they have a YouTube, but if they do, I will be linking it down below. And they are talking about a theater that they call the Demon Theater. Y'all,
I have been scratched here. It's always a cross. It leaves scars on you.
One of the props flew across the room, like at me. I don't know, I guess the ghosts are mad or something.
Tonight, we're at one of the most haunted theaters in America. This place is unbelievably scary. It has a nickname, the Demon Theater, and that's for a reason.
I definitely feel like there's evil in this building.
All we want to do is talk to you.
Over.
Yeah, over there. You can scratch me, you can attack me, you can push me.
Too easy.
Son.
Ow, dude. Let's go to hell, buddy. That's the 4th time now. Who is she? The butcher.
Mabel!
No.
Hello?
I don't know what that was.
you know, I'll never understand why people choose to go to these places and set up camp and make it into like a theme park for spooky enthusiasts. That just disturbs and pisses off the negative energy and spirits that are already there. But I guess if you live in Baltimore, or if you're ever visiting, this is a place, a tourist attraction that you can go see and fuck around and find out. This next video comes from an account under the handle MurderGeek7, and she's telling us the history of Edgar Allan Poe and how this said portal affected him. Just listen.
So we all have heard of the very famous Edgar Allan Poe, but have you ever heard of his hauntings? On September 27th of 1849, Edgar Allan Poe was headed from Virginia to Baltimore. He wouldn't be seen again until about a week later, when he was found drunk, delirious, and wearing somebody else's clothes. He was found in a bar and was hospitalized after this, where he spent his time shouting somebody else's name randomly and pretty deliriously, and then right before he died, he said, "Lord help my poor soul," and this was on October 7th. Now many people claim that the home that he once lived in is haunted. So located in Baltimore, this is the house that Edgar Allan Poe once lived in. But not only do they think that Mr. Poe haunts this place, there's also a woman seen in dated clothing that also wanders this house. People who visit often feel somebody tapping on their shoulder, but when they turn around, nobody's there. Doors and windows also open up on their own when the house is completely unoccupied. And many people have claimed to see a light that looks like a candle bobbing in the windows, like somebody's walking around. Edgar's ghost is also often seen in Fells Point, which is a smaller community in Baltimore, and most often seen at the Horse You Came In On Saloon, which is one of Baltimore's oldest bars, and Edgar was also known to frequent this bar. And beginning in 1949, there was also someone only known as the Phantom Toaster that would come to Edgar Allan Poe's grave on January 19th, which was his birthday. He would toast Edgar and then leave 3 roses and an unfinished bottle of brandy and 3 red roses. But this stopped in 2009, but somebody picked it back up in 2016. So what are your thoughts on this? I've always wanted to do a deeper dive into Edgar Allan Poe because his death is really mysterious. So what are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more creepy things.
Does that not come off as weird to y'all? Like he moves there and nobody sees him for a week and he just went through this delirium? I don't know. Comment down below if you've ever heard the story about Edgar Allan Poe and what do you think he was suffering from? This next creator goes by the handle The Beauty Queen, and she is giving us a tour of one of the most haunted, sorry y'all, my son doing dishes, but one of the most haunted hotels in Baltimore, and a little bit of a history lesson as well.
This story is about a picture taken in Baltimore, and as Mike Shue shows us, whether you believe in ghosts or not, this may totally creep you out.
A Fells Point cornerstone, Bertha's, is famous for their food and drink, their bumper stickers, their altered stickers, and for this.
So do you talk to the ghost?
I do.
Every day?
Well, no, that was way back then.
Laura Norris is one of the owners. When working upstairs, she says she's felt its presence and even asked for safe passage.
And so I kind of stammered and said, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going home. Bye-bye.
In fact, there are so many ghosts here in the wind.
The tail's up and the fur all bushy.
One ghost story follows another.
You can see the deductions of face.
But it's one thing to talk about it, and quite another to see one.
Yeah, this is it.
Melissa Rowell gives ghost tours that start at Bertha's. Recently, one of her clients sent her this photo. Okay, no biggie, but look closely at the 3rd floor window. What's that?
I haven't seen those pictures.
Here, let me point out a few things. The vague image of a little girl, her hands stretched out through the window. That's what people are seeing, and it coincides with a ghost story from here.
And people had seen the same little girl skipping in the other room.
Do you feel anything?
No.
Do you?
I'm open-minded about it.
Tony is Laura's husband, the other co-owner. Ghosts? Sure. He's heard a lot of stories in his bar.
My friend Bob saw ghosts constantly when he worked by himself upstairs.
Too. It's definitely coming out of the window. You can see the building behind her hand. Yeah.
Who's the ultimate judge? You are. Ghost? Optical illusion? One thing's for certain. That third floor area is sealed off. No one was up there the night that picture was taken.
Ooh, you know what? I don't know about you. I'll say it. I do not believe in ghosts. But if you say, oh my God, a ghost, where? I'll be looking.
You?
Yeah, I would.
Shocking.
I don't think that the beauty queen is the original creator of this video, so I will be tagging the creator down below. But such beauty and elegance in such a scary, creepy place. This next creator comes from an account called A Haunted Life. The creator's name is Josh, and he actually toured those said burial grounds that's under the church that we talked about earlier. It's called a catacomb, but he was brave enough to go down there, and this is what he's seen. Shout out to Josh because he's the bravest person I know, because you have to get to these catacombs through tunnels. You will never catch the black cauldron down there because ain't no way. I would be angry as hell if I was a spirit and I decided, hey, I want to be earthbound, and then I figure out they built a church over my grave. I'm haunting everybody. So I won't be down there. I won't be visiting, but I just thought it was pretty cool to see these catacombs underneath the church. This next clip comes from an account called Casey Lynn, and she is just showing you some of Baltimore's most haunted places, okay? You may see some of the other places that we mentioned earlier in the video, but just look, and I was surprised, and I'll tell you why after. This video really surprised me because I never knew that there were so many haunted places in Maryland. Baltimore, to be exact. I did not go to school in Baltimore. I went to college in a town called Bowie, Maryland. I went to a HBCU, but that was like a 30-minute, 45-minute commute. I never knew. I wasn't the spooky enthusiast that I am now, but I never knew that this was even a thing. So shout out to this account for putting me up on game. All in all, do I think Baltimore is a portal? No. Is it haunted as hell? Yes. But I've seen and lived in some portals, baby. And I didn't get that feeling when I lived in Maryland. I just didn't. You would get the eerie feelings at night because it is a lot of wooded areas in Bowie, Maryland. But I did not pick up on anything suspicious. Spooky suspicious, I mean. But it's definitely haunted. There are some other cities that I need to cover because those places are absolutely portals. Okay? So if you would like me to cover a city, please comment down below. And please, if you made it this far in the video, let me know where you're watching from so I can shout y'all city, town, country out. And until next time, y'all do good, be good, and stay safe.